If you want to sound like a real jazz musician, this video might save you years of frustration and going around in circles. I used to think that all I needed was a degree from the right university and maybe the right teacher, or maybe even a book which would just magically transform me into a real jazz musician. But you know what? I was wrong. There are a few things which I desperately wish someone would have told me when I started learning jazz piano. So maybe if you're feeling stuck, frustrated, or overwhelmed, these things that I'm going to share with you might change everything and save you years. The first thing that I wish someone would have told me is that jazz is a language. So you need to learn jazz exactly the same way in which you learn a language. Well, now, how do we learn a language? The first thing is we have to be in an environment where this language is spoken frequently. So this might be in your home. So if you're in a home and you're raised in a home where a specific language is spoken, you're more likely to get good at that language than if you are trying to learn that language but you live in a completely different environment. So if I wanted to learn Mandarin, living in a Chinese household might help me, or maybe even better if I live in China where everyone is speaking this language, then I'm more likely to learn it faster than if I'm trying to learn it from a book, for instance. Or if I wanted to learn French, if I lived in France or in a French-speaking household, I might learn that language faster. Now, the equivalent when it comes to music and jazz in particular is we've got to create for ourselves that jazz environment. So this doesn't mean that let's all start a march and relocate to New Orleans or to the United States. So what I'm saying rather is that even in your own house, you can create or recreate that jazz environment. So you can do this by simply playing jazz music frequently. Okay, so you could be playing jazz recordings around the house, on your device, in your car, or even better, you could be attending jazz concerts where you actually get to listen to real jazz musicians and see them. So that's one way that you could create this environment for yourself. When you're in a jazz environment, the most important thing is to just be listening. So you're listening, and sometimes even through osmosis, I guess, you begin to absorb these fine details about jazz. So yes, it's important to listen actively, but if that music's just there, and even when you're listening passively, you assimilate quite a lot of things. The next thing, now that you're in that environment and you're hearing this music all the time, is you want to start imitating. So suppose you're learning English and you hear the word daddy. But as a baby, maybe your interpretation of that is dada, because maybe you can't say it the way you heard it, but you know it sounds something like that. That's actually how babies learn to speak. So they copy, and sometimes, although what they copy is not exactly what it should be, no one's judging them, and therefore they actually get quite good at this. So in music, what I would suggest is you start to imitate the people, particularly the musicians that you admire. But a little word of caution there. It's also quite important, and this is another thing I wish someone would have told me, is that when you are choosing the people to imitate, try and find something that's within your reach. So for instance, the baby picked just that one word, dada, because they see their daddy all the time. They didn't necessarily start by learning Shakespeare or some very advanced vocabulary. They just picked one thing and repeated it quite a number of times. So in the world of jazz, one mistake that I made early on is I was completely blown away by pianists, for instance, like Art Tatum, who were playing things that I had no idea what they were playing, but it just sounded marvelous. I could hear fast playing. I was like, this sounds super cool. Or even Bud Powell. Bud Powell was another one that I really admired early on. But that music was so far or so out of my reach that it was not a wise idea for me to pursue that at the time. In fact, you know what? I actually tried, and it didn't take me too long to start getting discouraged and even asking myself, will I ever be good enough to do that? So for me, a big turning point after having wasted some of that time was discovering pianists that were more within my reach. I'm talking about people like Horace Silver. I'm talking about people like Red Garland. I think Wynton Kelly might have been a bit further out for me, but the Horace Silver was definitely within reach for me, so I could hear what he was playing, and after a number of attempts at figuring out, or maybe even slowing down the recording and all sorts of things, I was able to figure it out after a while. Whereas with Art Tatum, there was no ways I could figure out what both hands were doing. So you want to find a musician that's not too far away, especially from a technical point of view, from what you can actually manage on the instrument. So I'd suggest someone who plays simple. Oscar Peterson was another one who, especially when he played the bluesy stuff, I thought that stuff was within reach. So I could copy some of that stuff. And I still use all this stuff in my playing today. So with learning language, simple words, in music, simple musicians. So what you want to do, because you're listening to them, you're in that environment, and you're beginning to imitate them, well, you might take something like this little thing that I remember getting from Horace Silver. I might have got this from a recording of Song for My Father, I think. He played something like that over an F minor chord. Okay, in this case I'm just playing an F6. So you want to imitate that and maybe try and get as close to it as possible. So this is my version of Dada as a baby jazz pianist. Now, the baby, whenever they see their father, is probably going to say Dada. Now, as a jazz musician, whenever I see a minor chord, I'm going to attempt to play, okay, in whatever key that might be. So let's say I'm playing blue bossa, and I'm playing, so I played that over a C minor chord. I knew C minor was coming, so it was slightly different, just like how Daddy and Dada, slightly different. If you alter the rhythm of what you intended to copy, that's also fine. So once you've got your word or your little phrase, and you understand the context in which that word was said, you want to find as many opportunities to play that as possible. So I might be playing Summertime. See, there's that Horace Silver lick there. I included it on that D minor chord. That was a perfect opportunity. Might have been playing Autumn Leaves. I know G minor's coming, so I can play that. Okay, so you look for opportunities to play and to use that little thing that you're imitating from all this listening that you've been doing in your newly found environment. In this case, that was Horace Silver. And it doesn't have to be Horace. So if you're already advanced and you're able to copy someone else, it's got to be someone that you like and admire as well. Otherwise, there's probably no motivation there. But something within reach, definitely important. Hello there, my music family and friends. I just wanted to take a quick break from the video, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Now, really quickly, did you know that about 75% of the people that watch my videos are not yet subscribed to this channel? That means there's a chance that you're probably not subscribed either. So if you're not subscribed, please do me a favor and go and click on that subscribe button. That's really going to help me to continue creating content like this and for this channel to do really well. The next thing I wanted to say was, if you are either a musician or a songwriter who's looking to grow their skills, I would like to invite you to a very special online event. This is called Play Piano Like a Pro. So this is for anyone who's never played the piano, or maybe you've played a little bit, but you really want to develop your skills. In just 90 days, I will take you through step by step from absolute beginner to really sounding like a very decent pro. Then the final online event that I would like to invite you to is, if you are a piano player who's already played and you're probably at an intermediate level, so that means you can play some chords and the inversions, you know your scales, and you can play basic songs in different keys. I've got a jazz program that I'm also running over 90 days that I would like to invite you to, where we're going to learn the basics of jazz piano, chord voicings, jazz tunes, chord progressions, how to improvise, the works. So if this sounds like something that you might be interested in, I am going to put a link in the description below. So please click that link and I will get in touch with you. Okay, so let's jump back into the video. As you are imitating, also be patient with yourself and know that, like a baby learns one word at a time, sometimes one phrase at a time. So when you're learning a word or a phrase, just be patient. I once heard this one, I think, is Wynton Kelly. In fact, that's it, sir. That's how it went. Okay, so I've learned that one phrase. Well, the next, after I've explored this in many different songs, I'm going to try and find as many opportunities to play that as possible. This one's over a 2-5-1. Okay, mistakes, everything, that's all fine. So now you begin to look for opportunities to play that. Okay, and you're very patient, so it's not like you've learned it and then you're like, I need to find the next lick already. No, explore it in as many different situations as possible. It might even be with a different rhythm, it might be a different tempo, it might be a different song. Okay, so maybe I'm playing, let's see, that already forces me to learn that in this new key, because there's a 2-5-1 in the key of A flat there. So I'm already thinking, so I might be playing all the things you are. I missed an opportunity to play that there. I'm going to try next time. Maybe here. I'm going to try it here as well. See, there it wasn't exact as far as the rhythm, but the notes were the same, the idea was there. But that's how you begin to internalize this vocabulary and this language. Okay, so you're patient, one word at a time, one phrase or one lick at a time, and you'll definitely get there. So the other thing that I wish someone would have told me, again, going back to language, I think everyone who's learning a language uses their voice when they're learning to speak this language. And with music, That's one thing that it's a mistake that I made, I think, earlier on. I think if I had started using my voice earlier, my ears would have developed faster and I would have really understood this language a lot faster. So when you've learned something, so let's say there's this is a Charlie Parker phrase, which I think I've used in another video before. So I used to just pick that from the recording and maybe find the notes one by one. But I think a more effective way than going straight to the instrument is trying to sing that phrase. So I will sing that again. Now, if I try and play what I'm singing, I'm sure my phrasing is going to sound a lot better than when I just played it with my fingers. I'm going to try that actually. So okay, so being able to sing it is also going to enable me to play this idea or to incorporate it subconsciously. Because when you're improvising, whether it's on stage with other people or even by yourself, sometimes these things or these melodic ideas come to you and you listen back and you're like, hang on, where did that Charlie Parker thing come from? You know, but that can only happen, I think, when you begin to use your voice to actually sing these phrases. Then you're not playing by brain anymore, but you're now playing by ear. Okay, so I would seriously encourage everybody to sing whatever they're learning. So using your voice is definitely a good way for you to master this language a lot faster. Now, I've already touched on this, but a very important thing when it comes to learning language is repetition. So you learn something, you want to make sure that you say that word over and over and over. You understand the context of that word, so repeat it. In music, you want to repeat that in different keys, different tempos, different songs, different styles. Okay, so in fact, there's a phrase that says repetition is the mother of learning. And I think only with repetition do things go from the state of your conscious mind, where you're really thinking about everything, to subconscious mind, where you're like, where on earth did that come from? Well, it came because you did it, but you did it over and over and over. A lot of teachers recommend that when you've learned something, you do it in all 12 keys, which is a fantastic idea. Not always maybe possible for beginners to play things in all keys. That just sounds like a very daunting task. But over a period of time, it will help if you repeat these ideas and then you try them in multiple keys. Okay. So now you're in that environment and you're listening to this language, listening to that music, you're imitating this language, imitating these musicians and their lines. You are repeating these things over and over, these words or these licks and phrases. The next thing you want to do is to start speaking with other people, which is playing with other musicians. When you start speaking these things that you've learned, especially in private, sometimes maybe someone might correct you. You know, like, oh, hang on, you've said that word completely wrong. Okay, and they might even slow it down for you and say it like this. Especially when you're a child, people tend to do that sometimes. Or when you are new to that language, people would correct you. And what's important is patience and also just trusting the process and actually being grateful for correction. That is very helpful. And in the process of learning jazz, if you begin speaking with other musicians, if you start playing with others, whether it's just a few friends at home or at some club somewhere and you're playing at a jam session, it's very important that you learn from these experiences. So you might realize simple things like, in my case, the one thing I realized one time was, hang on, I don't have to play all the time. And this is because a bass player told me, hey, and sometimes, when I'm playing my solo, I mean, just sit, actually, literally, can you just take your hands and put them under your bottom and don't play anything at all? And that was a very good piece of advice. And he even said to me, listen to people like Herbie Hancock, or listen to McCoy Tyner. And I know after that session, we actually did some listening together. It was very eye-opening to me. This is the first time where I actually heard, wow, these guys can actually sit out for quite a while. Who knows what they're doing? Maybe they've gone to get themselves a drink or something. But then when they come in, you really feel the impact of it, because they've been quiet for a while. So you don't have to play all the time. Another person once told me as well at a jam session that your left hand is too busy. So you don't have to be, especially when I was improvising, you don't have to play those chords all the, because now, as nice as they are, they're taking away from the melodic lines that you're creating. So now we can't hear them. Light bulb moment for me right there. As I began to listen to more musicians, I realized, hang on, these guys are not comping heavily. You can really hear these lines because maybe the left hand's playing softer and maybe it's not playing as much. Okay, so very useful information and very useful insight that you can only get when you play with others. And then you make mistakes, and then correction comes, and then now it's up to you to embrace and learn from it. So in order for you to get to this point where you are playing with other people or speaking with others, I wish someone would have told me earlier that I need to really know a number of jazz standards, because these are songs that most jazz musicians will know. So if you want to speak to others, it's nice to have common vocabulary. Again, when it comes to standards, I would suggest, you can learn anything you want really, but my suggestion is, again, something that's within reach, and hopefully pieces that use the same sort of ingredients. So maybe songs that are using 2-5-1s. So it might not be as useful to go from, let's say you've just played All the Things You Are, and then you go to some more advanced pieces, and maybe something that Wayne Shorter wrote, or maybe a Cecil Taylor tune, or something that's very creative, but maybe not necessarily including 2-5-1s. I would have preferred if someone had told me earlier that look for these songs, and given me a list actually, and say, these are some easy songs that all use 2-5-1s. And look, this song is in that key, or most commonly played in that key, and so is this one, and so is this one. So now we've got songs that are using the same ingredients as far as chord progressions, but they're also in common keys. Because, going back to the issue of practicing in 12 keys, you will find that there are quite a number of songs that most people will play in particular keys. A lot of jazz standards are written in keys that have got flats in them. So if you're playing in the key of F, and I guess because mostly for wind players and brass players, they like these keys like F, B flat, E flat, A flat. So if you find yourself, those could be the first 4 keys maybe to explore. You might even put C in there. Okay, so you could start with those 5 rather than starting with other keys where maybe not many standards are written in those keys. Those might be useful for future, but for starters, you're going to start with those keys with the flats. You might want to learn things like a 12-bar blues, because many songs use that blues progression. And once you start reharmonizing that 12-bar blues, those same ingredients like turnarounds, you'll find those in other songs. And a lot of licks that you might learn from transcribing some 12-bar blues, you'll find those useful in other jazz standards. Okay, so I would definitely suggest standards that are accessible, that use the same ingredients, and pretty much in the same sort of keys. Now, speaking of songs, the next thing that I wish someone had told me was that it's very important to really understand a song and how that song is actually put together. So I remember trying to learn bebop, so I would play maybe Donnelly. Okay, so I've learned that in A flat, right? But then here's the next song that I'm learning. Now, the things that I had learned in Donnelly, like I could not make that connection. To take the things from Donnelly and apply them to ornithology, it almost felt like I was learning a completely new thing altogether. And then I felt like I was going nowhere. Maybe from there you might now scrapple from the apple or something, and again, new key, or you're playing Yardbird Suite. Now I'm in C. So, and then the rhythm changes, B flat. So it's almost like every song was in a new key, and I couldn't make the connection between these songs until years and years later I realized that, hang on, if only I had understood the chord progression or the function of each chord in the song, I would be playing with so much confidence by now, because a lot of these songs share things in common. I actually bumped into this accidentally because at some point I told myself, okay, I'm going to learn, it might have been Donnelly. I actually said, let me learn Donnelly in the key of C. And for some reason, something clicked for me, because suddenly I could see that, okay, C, I could see my chord 1. I could see that I'm going to chord 6, but I'm approaching it from a half step above. And I could tell that I'm going to chord 2. And I would tell that I'm now playing a 2-5-1. And then I could tell that I'm going to a different key now with a 2-5-1. And that key is the key of my subdominant, which is F. For some reason, I could not see that when I was playing it in A flat. But after having done it in C and then going back to A flat, I was like, I get it now. There, I'm going to chord 6, which is F7, but I've gone there via F sharp. And then chord 2, which is B flat. I make that minor and play a 2-5-1 in the key of the subdominant. Right? There it is. And then, well, I figured this one out a little later, that there's a thing called a backdoor dominant, which is the flat 7. Okay? But this was much later. So I wish earlier someone would have just told me, hang on a second. Instead of thinking about a song, think about how the song is actually put together. Think of the function of each chord. Think about the form of the song. If I had done that, I think with every new song, that song would not have been as new. Maybe there would be one new thing or one slightly different thing. But I might have seen common traits in the songs, and that would have made my learning and ultimately my playing progress a lot faster. So hopefully you enjoy these things that I learned throughout my journey, and some mistakes and things that I think could possibly help you, because you might be in the same boat. If you like this video, please feel free to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do so. And if you'd like to learn more about jazz and more things like this, I'm going to put a link in the description where I invite you to a 90-day program that I do, where a lot of people are getting enlightened constantly about small things about jazz. A lot of these people are adults who've tried this by themselves, but through this program they found themselves making progress and understanding things in a shorter period of time. So that might really help you, so please feel free to check that out. So please try out all these things and all these ideas. And if you enjoy them, let me know in the comments below. If you've got questions, also let me know in those comments. And I hope to see you in the next video.